It's a pleasure to be here and have the opportunity to speak with everyone about the work that I do. As was said, I am a lead mathematical statistician, which means I am a team leader, but not that long ago, I was also a statistical reviewer, which is what most statisticians are at the FDA. And so I will just sort of be giving you guys a general overview about what biostatisticians do at the FDA. And specifically, this is mostly towards PhD level positions, but we do also employ master's level biostatisticians. I think the work is slightly different, and it's a different team, but I'm happy to talk with anyone kind of about those nuances and differences after the talk, if anyone's interested. So here's just an outline of the talk, just going over some responsibilities and opportunities for statisticians at the FDA, some research topics and challenges based on some personal experiences at the FDA, and then just opportunities to join or work with the FDA. And I will say this is kind of not just for students, this last bullet point, but faculty too at academics. So those here are, if you're not really considering working government, you want to do academia, but still would want to do projects that would pertain to the FDA. There's relevant work opportunities for that too. So I guess first, what does the FDA do? It's kind of a broad scope. We kind of ensure that drugs and vaccines and biologic products and medical devices are both safe and effective. There's also kind of a foods branch. I don't know as much about them. I work within the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, but they do have a foods group that looks to make sure that foods are safe, wholesome, sanitary, and properly labeled. And then there's also cosmetics and dietary supplements. We also, one of the newer branches, which isn't super new anymore, is the tobacco products and kind of the regulatory roles there. And then advances in public health to help speed product innovations. That's kind of generally amongst all the different centers what we do. So some FDA facts. Are responsible for oversight of more than 2.7 trillion in consumptions of food, medical products, and tobacco. And the products we regulate account for 20 cents of every dollar spent by US consumers. So the work we do is quite impactful on daily lives in that sense. There's over 20,000 prescription drug products that are approved for marketing, and also 621, I think actually that's more now, biologic products, which are kind of like drug products. So just generally about FDA kind of location, it's in the Washington DC area. You can see this picture of the Washington Monument on the map. That's Washington DC, and FDA, the campus. If you can see that red diamond with the arrow pointing to it, that's where the FDA campus is located in Silver Spring. It's I used to live around there, and it's pretty easy to get between Washington DC and there. So it's kind of a fun area. And then the campus itself, one of the big draws for me when I was looking at places to work was actually this campus. It almost has kind of like an academic feel with all the buildings and the number of employees. I guess pre-COVID, this campus was packed with people. They actually had kind of a hybrid system with people working from home, I think once a week or twice a week, depending on how senior you were. It was more to relieve the congestion on campus because there's just so many people, and it was a great opportunity to work with a lot of other really smart people and statisticians and clinicians. Now I haven't been back much since COVID, but it's a lot more empty, a lot more remote work, I think, happening is typically happening, I think, around the country. So just kind of giving you guys a quick overview of the FDA as a whole. So we have a Office of the Commissioner. So the commissioner is appointed by the president. Dr. Robert Califf is our current commissioner. And so underneath this kind of FDA structure are, I think, 7 different centers. So the centers themselves, we all live kind of under the same roof as the FDA, but we're all very different and separate. So this is something that gets a little bit confusing sometimes when we're doing interviews with job candidates, because you might, if you're a job candidate, you look at your interview roster at ENR, let's say, and you see you have multiple FDA interviews. But they're typically for different centers. So each center kind of they will employ biostatisticians or statisticians, but they do it, they're separate from each other. So you have to interview for each center separately. If you're looking to apply for a job at any one of these centers or multiple centers, you would need to submit a resume to each center separately, because it's not typically, the resumes are not, our CVs are not circulated outside of between centers. But you can see here, there's 7 different centers. I work for the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, which we also refer to as CDER. That's the biggest of all the centers in terms of a number of employees and number of statisticians too. I work in the Office of Biostatistics, which is where most of the statisticians are working. And I think we have now over 300 statisticians working for us within the different groups, which I'll talk about later. And so a lot of the work that I describe in this presentation is specific for this center, but it can also translate to other centers too, like the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research. They're quite similar. We work a lot with them. They do a lot of the vaccine reviews and evaluations. So a lot of our work is very similar. There's also the Center for Devices and Radiological Health that looks basically at the medical devices. There's the Center for Tobacco Products, Center for Veterinary Medicine, and then there's the food group, which is very different from the rest of us. And there's also the Center for Toxicological Research, which I actually have no experience with working with them. So I'm not quite sure if they employ statisticians or not, but I know all the other centers do. So just kind of taking a deeper dive into the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. So what we do, our main overarching goal is to ensure safe and effective drugs are available to improve the public health. So what we mean by a drug, it's an article intended for use in diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease, and to affect the function or structure of the body. So you can see here what some of those might entail, which so here we have kind of just the organization structure of our center. So each group kind of lives in a different, within CDER lives in a different office. So there's the Office of New Drugs. So that's where you usually find your clinicians, your medical doctors that are, that's kind of their office. There's the Surveillance and Epidemiology group, the Office of Translational Sciences. That's where the office, the biostatisticians are in the Office of Biostatistics. And then there's also generic drugs, a group for that. But going back to the Office of Translational Sciences, you can see here that kind of breaks down even further. There's 4 different groups within that. We have kind of other offices, sister offices. We don't necessarily interact with them, but we see them a lot kind of within the different teams, and we might have joint seminars with them. Clinical pharmacology, computational sciences, and then study integrity and surveillance. So now going down to just the office where the statisticians are at, and this is kind of the day-to-day. These are the people that that you typically will see and work with. We kind of have our own offices on the in the same building on 2 separate floors. And within that, we have 9 different divisions. So you can see here the first 5 divisions, Division of Biometrics 1 through 5, those have the groups that are more geared towards certain medical conditions. So things like diabetes, psychiatry, neurology. So you get kind of those specialties. And so the statisticians are in each of these teams, kind of help support the any of the submissions coming in for these specific disease areas. So for example, when I first started at the FDA, I was actually in the diabetes group, which was at the time diabetes and general endocrine. It's since changed and split up, but so a lot of the submissions I would look at were diabetes submissions and also weight loss submissions. So I guess that one nice thing about having such a large office is it's fairly easy to move around. So after about 5 years, I know I got a little tired of looking at diabetes submissions. So I made the move into cardiology and nephrology, and that's the team actually that I lead now. It's nice because you can start somewhere that you're interested in, but if you find something else that you might be interested in, it's fairly easy to move around as well. And because there's so many different people, it's a great place to learn as well. The oncology group, DB5, Division of Biometrics 5, they tend to be one of the busiest ones. You can see Division of Biometrics 5 and 9 used to be one group, and so both of those tend to be more oncology based submissions. If that's something that you're interested in, there's never a shortage of positions open and lots of submissions and things to look at there. The other 3 groups, those are still based on clinical trials, but they tend to be a little bit different. I know that the Division 7, which is focused more on safety, they do a lot of insurance claims. They look at a lot of the safety databases, a lot more. They work more on with the epidemiologists within the FDA, and and they actually can kind of do their own studies based on these different databases. So it's the work they do and the methodologies they use can be quite different actually from the kind of classical clinical trials that you might see in other divisions.
And for safe genetics or geriatrics?
Generics. So
Generic,
8 is
okay.
Yeah, generic drugs.
Like there's a G and what I can see there.
Yes, yeah. Sorry, it's a little small, but yeah. So that's the generics. That's also a very new group. So it used to be all the
Bioequivalence, right?
exactly bioequivalence. That's what I was going to get to next. So yeah, it used to be all the other divisions would handle their own generic products, but it was just too complicated. It's very different.
That would be like it's kind of non-inferiority.
Exactly.
Okay.
Non-inferiority. And also it's different the way the regulatory rules as they apply to it. So they ended up just kind of creating their own groups so that that folks in that group will have the specialized knowledge to handle that rather than kind of expecting reviewers to pick that up and understand the nuances there, the differences between, an original and a generic. So there's a lot of different areas, a lot you can learn within the office, and this is just within Cedar. There's again in the other centers, I'm sure there's other groups within them, and it's fairly simple, I think, to move between centers as well. So I don't know a lot about the other centers, but I can always, if you have an interest in them, I'm happy to pass your information along to others in those centers that might be able to answer questions. So this is to give you guys an idea about the number of statisticians we have within our office. This is OB Science Day. So Science Day is this completely reviewer run kind of day. It's meant to kind of just bring all the statisticians within Cedar together to listen to scientific talks, and they also have fun games, and they bring in food. They used to do like a tea snacks, and so I think 2019, for very obvious reasons, I guess, was the last one that we had that was completely in person with everybody that could come attending. So, and this is kind of the office as it was then. It has since grown since then. So we actually have more than is pictured there. And I believe they are trying to bring, so we've had virtual OB Science days for the past few years, and they have, I believe last year they actually brought it back to partially in person. So it was a hybrid format. So that's something fun. And they do try, at least within my office, to build kind of a office culture and camaraderie, so that everyone, even outside of your own teams and divisions, because it's harder to meet statisticians that are outside of your division. So we try to provide opportunities for that. So some responsibilities and opportunities for the Office of Biostatistics statisticians. So understanding and applying key laws and regulations, performing statistical reviews to evaluate drug development, safety, and effectiveness. And those are very important. Those are kind of like your day-to-day, what's the expectations of you if you're a reviewer within the office. Participating in advisory committee meetings. So that's, I don't know if anyone's familiar with those, but those are actually, if they weren't so much work, they would be a lot of fun. But it's basically, they get this panel of very high-ranking experts within the field, lots of high-ranking MDs, and they'll bring in some statisticians too on this committee. They'll bring in usually from academia, and we bring these kind of, if there's a problematic submission that's come in that we, might have, might be something we're not sure we should approve. So we'll bring the questions, the issues in front of the committee of experts and kind of get them to weigh in and ask them our questions. And it also gives the drug sponsor an opportunity to come in and talk about their drug and the clinical trial and the issues that are being presented and why they should not be considered issues. So it's an interesting day. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun on the day of, and it gives you the opportunity to see a lot of the experts within the field. I know at one of my advisory committee meetings, the statistician that the sponsor brought in was, I think, Dr. Pocock. So I ended up having to talk at that, and he was talking for the sponsor. So that was fun. It was interesting to see. It made me very nervous. So you get those kind of opportunities as well. You also get to contribute to policy and guidance development, kind of guiding FDA thinking about how we should handle certain matters. So it can be quite impactful, your work in that matter. There's researching statistical issues relevant to drug regulation. So that's something that especially a lot of the newer hires like to do, is to continue their research, especially from grad school. And that's something I like to tell folks, that there's opportunities. So if you can you have the day-to-day statistical reviews and things that you need to do for the job, but there's a lot of opportunities for research, and not just continue your own research, but you might be looking at something, doing a review, and find some interesting new methodology that we don't quite know how to handle, or what the regulatory implications are. So you can write kind of a project summary to get a intern to help you research this, or you can ask your team lead to see if they can free up some more of your time to take a deeper dive into those issues. There's also funding available within the FDA for research, but I will say it's not typically Not a lot of people do that because it is a lot of work, and requires a big time commitment that's beyond kind of what your regular day-to-day work is. And the expectations that you finish those the reviews as well. But there are opportunities for that, and there are lots of opportunities to attend and present at scientific meetings. I think I regularly, since pre-COVID and since COVID, I've had opportunities to go to at least 1 or 2 meetings every year, which has been nice to see everyone and to see other statisticians and folks that I might have known from, grad school and whatnot. And there's always opportunities to continue professional development. There's lots of seminars that we have, and we'll bring in a lot of experts and outside speakers that will talk about various things going on in the field. And then there's always, because there's so many statisticians in this office, there's lots of people that can teach the new reviewers and mentor new reviewers. That's something that my office has actually been really good about. They've actually started implementing programs to do this. So I'll try and be quick on this one. It's just a brief history of drug law and kind of how the FDA actually got its start. So the Pure Food and Drugs Act, you can see that was well over 100 years ago. And that was kind of prohibiting interstate commerce and adulterated and misbranded food and drugs. So that's not exactly the FDA, but that's kind of going towards that direction. But the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act, that's really where FDA really got its start, where drugs needed to be shown to be safe before they could be marketed to the public. And then the Kiefer-Harris Amendment in 1962 is really what started FDA to become what it is today. And you'll actually at the FDA hear this kind of quoted during meetings when we're debating issues like, does this show substantial evidence of effectiveness? And so a lot of the principles that were kind of established here in this amendment are still kind of in practice today at the FDA. So that's just a little bit of background. So just getting into the work at the FDA that we do within CEDAR. So we have, whenever a new submission comes in, what will happen is they will put together a review team for this new submission. So typically, a clinician will be assigned to this, and along with a statistician and other relevant scientists, and they will kind of meet together, and that to be the review team for that submission. So within the submission, the submissions are pretty large. So it's not the expectation that everyone looks over everything, but there are certain sections that are relevant for each scientist. So the expectation is that we look over those sections relevant to statistics. And usually those are actually the sections that are also quite relevant to the clinicians, because within my group, we look over a lot of the efficacy data and kind of efficacy standards to make sure that the drug is working and doing what the sponsor says it's doing. The type of submissions that come in. So one of the submissions that comes in is called an investigational new drug. So reviews for that, typically under these IND reviews, these are kind of standard protocols and statistical analysis plans that we require the drug sponsors to submit a priori, so that we know that they're planning adequate and well-controlled studies. And so when we go through and review these, a lot of what we look for is the study design to make sure that there's minimal bias from the resulting data and the analysis results. So we're looking at valid controls in a well-defined population. There's the endpoints and the selection of these endpoints and what's going to be actually an endpoint that's useful for the the disease area in question. So pre-specification of the analysis plan, of course, is key. So we're looking at the different analysis and the assumptions behind the analysis. A lot of sponsors like to have interim analysis. And so that usually requires a heavy lift from the statistical reviewer to make sure that those analyses and how they're being addressed won't kind of inflate type 1 error or somehow bias the results. And then one thing that you hear a lot of in our office, in our comments coming from us, is prevention and treatment of missing data. And that's a big source of potential bias if it's not handled correctly. And of course, there's other review aspects like dose selection, but typically other teams will kind of lead those, or groups will lead those out, and they may consult with us on aspects of it. So another type of review, and these are kind of the bigger ones that we look at, are these new drug applications and biologic license applications. So these are kind of what we look at after the protocols, after the study is done, everything's completed. So we're looking at kind of the study reports, what happened during the study to evaluate adequacy of the design and the conduct of the study. We require that the sponsor send us data if they have access to it, so we can review the data. And one of the first kind of steps that we do is to replicate what was done with the key analyses. And then if we see issues with somehow the study design or what was done, we might have to perform additional analyses as needed. So, and that's something that the reviewer will kind of, after a thorough review, kind of make that assessment and talk with their team leader and division director as needed to make that determination. And then at the end of this whole big review process, we'll look at the proposed label for the drug. So every drug, of course, comes with a label kind of stating what the safety and the efficacy is, and it kind of gives an indication so that the prescriber will know how to prescribe it to patients. So this is kind of also a big part and where we have the most impact on the public health for individual reviews. So we'll go through certain sections of the label and make sure that the numbers that are being reported are accurate and the way they're being interpreted or are not being somehow misleading. So that's a big lift at the end of the reviews. And then we'll, of course, have to present whatever our findings are and write a statistical review on these findings. So we're looking for substantial evidence of effectiveness and also at a benefit risk framework. So making sure that there's, typically going to be some safety adverse events. So we kind of have to factor all that into the this benefit risk framework that the FDA has kind of implemented within the reviews. And then sometimes we might have post-marketing commitments and requirements that we require of the drug sponsor. Usually this is required for to confirm certain efficacy benefits, maybe looking at pediatric trials in younger age groups, or a lot of them are safety as well, and making sure that there's no additional safety flags that we need to add to the label. And so then these post-marketing safety reviews. And so if you remember back in that breakdown of the office, there was Division of Biometrics 7. And so this is typically where the reviews that this group does. So these are post-marketing after approval clinical trials. And we require this at the time of the approval due to certain safety concerns. So there's this adverse event reporting system that that group works with a lot. And so they kind of will, that division will kind of do a lot of analyses within that that system to determine that there's no further safety issues. Since I have not worked with that division, I don't know a whole lot of details about what that entails, but I do know that that's a majority of the work that they do. And they do have sort of active surveillance of certain drugs. I'm not sure exactly how they flag them or what it is that they which ones they're looking at, but they're able to query this large database of these different health records to look for safety events. And then, as you can imagine, there's a lot of epidemiologic studies that specific division works on. So some additional review activities. So there's the generic drug evaluation and research that was mentioned earlier for that for the other division. Pharmacology and toxicology, that's another group. There's, I believe that's Division of Biometrics 6. They do a lot of that work, and they kind of work separately on different issues from what the rest of the office does. But again, it's statistical in nature, just different applications and methodologies. There's chemistry, manufacturing, and controls. So that's actually a different group, but you'll be working sometimes with chemists and folks from that group. But they will lead things out and might ask statistical questions from us. And there's drug abuse potential and abuse deterrence studies, which are interesting. It's not one that I have a lot of knowledge about, but I know that those are some of the more interesting studies that can be reviewed. So the advisory committee meetings, I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. These committees are used to obtain kind of the independent expert advice. So as stated before, it's a lot of academics and medical doctors, but they're the goal is to try and get experts within the fields. I guess the only problem is sometimes we can't always get the experts because they'll have a conflict of interest if they also were helping the drug sponsor in any way with the development of the drug, which happens quite a bit actually. They usually have a consumer representative on the panel to kind of bring in that, and so to bring in kind of another viewpoint, and then the patient representative bringing in the patient viewpoint. And then there's industry. So I always thought this was interesting to have someone from a completely different company who's within, so if it's drug company A's drug is being presented to the advisory committee, they'll have someone from drug company B just completely separate, just on this committee, just bringing in an industry viewpoint. So it's always interesting to hear their viewpoint because it will typically be different from a lot of the other members. So as I said before, these are fun, but they're a lot of work. And so a lot of times the OB statisticians will have to prep for this and present at these meetings. And we will present the statistical issues for the discussion. A lot of the advisory committees I've been a part of, it's been the clinician and the statisticians that will present. And so we're usually the issues at hand are safety, effectiveness, benefit risk. There's one that I think the statistician has to speak a lot to when it's an issue is missing data and sensitivity analyses. So that's something that we typically have to, takes a lot of time to run those analyses and prep for. And then there might be issues with subgroup analyses that we have to address. And of course, I didn't mention it, but listed earlier is the surrogate endpoints and statistical versus clinical significance. Those are also pretty big issues that, but usually I found the clinical group tends, while we do present a statistical perspective, it's the clinical group that really has to kind of drive those points. So there's guidance and policy development. And so this is actually a part that I think is underrated, but it can be very impactful on just the public health in general. So there's guidance documents, which are the primary source of how we kind of tell the world what our policies are, what our expectations are for drug companies running these clinical trials. And so for a lot of these, statisticians will be a part of and may even play a leadership role for the guidances, and will be a part of other guidance groups, contributing the statistical viewpoint. And so a lot of what we say is really taken to heart and will affect how drug companies will run their clinical trials, and could be the difference between whether a drug is, able to be offered to the public or not. So there's a lot of opportunity for leadership and important contributions for statistical methods and policy. And specifically, a lot of it is through guidance work, but there's other ways to do it through there's a lot of FDA publications, and that's something that's actually highly encouraged within the office, is publishing and just your own research, especially as it helps the regulatory voice and kind of get across our thinking. There's a lot of internal seminars that we have that you can speak at if you have interesting ideas or methodology you'd like the rest of the office to learn more about. And then there's also a lot of external workshops and short courses that you can participate in and kind of give a FDA perspective that way as well. And a lot of people are interested in that, to know what the FDA is thinking for our reviews. So there's working groups within guidance development. So here's some past guidances. You can actually look these up. There's non-inferiority, adaptive designs, multiple endpoints, meta-analysis, and covariate adjustment. And we have a lot of expertise within these within our office, and a lot of that kind of gets discussed. So it's interesting. You can after you read these guidances, you can even talk with the leaders who kind of wrote these, and get a bit deeper understanding of what went into what is said in the recommendations. And then, of course, there's topics for future guidances. We're looking into Bayesian methodology and also master protocols. And then you can see here, there's some other active areas where there's just a lot of discussions going on within the FDA and within our office. So just some research opportunities. So there's just, when you're doing review work, you see a lot of statistical problems from the regulatory science. So when you come across these problems, there's always the opportunity to try and collaborate with your clinical counterparts or even other statisticians within the office. Or you can even find folks outside of the office who might have that expertise. You could even talk to maybe professors from when you were in grad school. So there are, as I said before, there's funding. These are the research science review funds. And there's more beyond this, but this is, I think, the one that most, if anyone applies for funding, this is the one I think most statisticians apply for. And that's supporting regulatory science and review enhancement projects, and is along with professional development. And then I think you guys received an email not too long ago for the ORISE fellowship program, and that is just starting out. And that's an excellent program where you have a summer fellowship at the FDA, and you get a mentor that you work with who is a full-time employee at the FDA. There's a lot of different projects. I know my office alone has, I want to say, probably at least 15 to 20 projects. We're looking for biostatisticians, graduate students to work on these. I know that the job announcement itself is incredibly vague, but it's kind of, because it's meant to be for the entire Center for Drug Evaluation. It also, the announcement itself covers, chemists and medical doctors and everyone that has a fellowship project for the summer. But once you apply, if your CV is picked up by my office, then the mentors who have projects that they're looking for someone will go through those CVs, and will reach out to the applicants, and you'll get a better idea at that point on what the projects are that are kind of being offered within my office. So that's something I strongly encourage folks to apply to. I think typically they're looking for second year and above PhD students, most of the projects that I know of. That's kind of one of the filters I know, general filters I know of. But even if you don't meet that requirement, it still can't hurt. Just go ahead, you can apply. And sometimes if your CV is an exceptionally good fit, it might still get picked up. So I just encourage you, because it's fun to see all the projects at the end. They have at the end of the summer, everyone presents what they've been working on and what their findings are, and it's pretty interesting. And I think it's a great learning experience to learn more about the day-to-day work at the FDA and who actually works there. So there's also teaching opportunities within the FDA. I know several people who have taught statistical courses at local universities as a course outside of the FDA time, but there's opportunities if that's something you would be interested in. Within the FDA, we actually have our own internal courses we offer towards other review groups, like specifically more the medical groups, but there's chemists and just anybody that wants to take it within the FDA can. So that's basic, intermediate, and advanced statistical methods, and also there's a clinical trials course that we also statisticians will give lectures in. And there's also a lot of mentoring and leadership opportunities as well, including being a mentor and creating projects for fellows, or becoming a team leader, which is something that I recently started. And then just participating in working groups or committees. There's a lot of those within my office, and then guidance groups as well. So I will say there's benefits and work-life balance. I will say you won't get bored at the FDA. There's a lot of different types of trainings and career advancement opportunities. Anyone that's interested in learning more about the career pathways and trajectories within my office, I'm happy to talk about it. There's different ones you can take. There's a pretty flexible schedule now. I think last I heard, I believe they're only requiring those who live in the area to come in once a week, and you can choose the day that you come in to the office. And so there's also flexible workplace arrangements. And there's just, I found that there's just a lot of support for people to have a work-life balance in general. If all you want to do is kind of just the regulatory day-to-day work, you don't want to do research or anything else, that is fine. That's not looked down upon at all. And you can really maintain your work-life balance that way as well. And there's a lot of benefits I'm happy to talk about. There's a lot of clubs within the FDA. That's something that surprised me when I started. There was a volleyball club. I don't know if it still exists. I know there's a Toastmasters club that meets pretty regularly that a lot of people are a part of. And so just some aspects of being at the FDA that I enjoy. Just the importance of the work, knowing that it is actually impactful. I've seen my review work, like the things I've said, the analyses I've done, make an impact on advisory committees and deciding, if, or even decision makers who have to actually approve or not approve a drug being, marketed. You do have that impact, which in turn impacts the public health. there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration, not just within statistics, but across other disciplines as well, and just a diversity of topics and responsibilities. So if you get bored with what you're doing, it's the FDA is big. You can find if you just want to find something else, a different group, different division, you can find other types of work to learn about and be exposed to. So FDA is where I started my career. I started 10 years ago after finishing my in Chapel Hill, my PhD. So it's one that I don't regret at all. And yeah, I'm happy to talk about that to anyone who's interested. And then there's even opportunities for faculty who maybe are already in academia. There's lots of research collaborations for the FDA employees, statisticians who are interested who doing research. They will sometimes reach out to experts, with academic experts in the field. Or if you see kind of area that the FDA has, you can always reach out to someone to see if there's interest in collaborating there. There's this special government employees. I know there's several statisticians. Trying to think of who I know. Frank Harrell has an SGE. He works at Vanderbilt, but he also works part-time, I think maybe 20% for the FDA as a consultant in providing expert opinions. So that's something that is available also for academics. And then, of course, participating in advisory committees. We always need good statisticians to weigh in on the issues. So if you, again, other ways you can learn more about FDA or get experiences outside of this talk. Attending an advisory committee, I think they're all on YouTube, streamed on YouTube now. You can, watch old ones, or there's always upcoming ones you can look up and watch as they're ongoing. There's, of course, the ORISE Fellowship. There's commissioners' fellowships, which are a little bit, I think those are more for after graduation. And then just applying for jobs. There's this email address, OTSHires at fda.hhs.gov. There's a group that can answer questions about it. And this is specifically for my Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. But I'm sure that the other centers have a similar setup as well. And that this group could probably let you know who else to hire or to email about hiring in other centers. And yeah, that's it. This is just one of the buses that goes to and from White Oak, where the campus is at. So that's it.